Moonshine Jesus, bright sky. Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Distilling the Gospel episode of the week. And as always, David is with me. And we have to admit, David, you and I are both pretty excited, right?
Yeah, I feel like for a long time, actually most of the summer, every time we do one of these, it's like dragging our feet. And,
do we have to do it? I don't really like this text.
I've actually talked to a lot of preachers who pretty much felt the exact same way having to preach all this stuff,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
very similar. So
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, this is the one time in at least a month or two that we are thrilled. So
Yeah,
likely you're going to be really bored.
Yeah, probably. We also have to admit that because it's coming out of Mark, we're probably going to ignore almost half of what's there because there's only half of it that we're really excited about. But you know what? We were finally recording late at night. So before we jump too far into this, we should get to our drinks this evening.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I've been waiting at least 90 days to have some of this and to share it on the show. I am showing Mark a big, massive 64-ounce brown jug.
Nice.
As a parting gift after I left my last job. A wonderful woman from my parish made me some homemade Kahlua.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so I am abiding with this and having a nice little White Russian. And if you notice, I'm using the Burial beer tasting glass that we got together at the brewery.
I remember that
when you were hanging out.
That's
here
a good call.
It's the perfect size for a White Russian.
Well, that's nice. Well, I just got back from California, and while I was over there, I went to San Diego's largest beer distribution place. They have so many beers, it's crazy. And I just was looking for something unusual that I can't get here in North Carolina. I found a beer from Base Camp. It's actually a really cool bottle. It's
nice. A s'more stout?
A s'mores stout from Base Camp out of, I think they're out of Oregon. Hold on.
That's awesome. I cannot wait. Is it good? Have you had it yet?
I haven't had it, so this is it. I'm going to open it right here.
This is almost as exciting as the gospel.
It pours really nice and dark.
Like your soul.
That's exactly right. Let's see what we got here. Oh, it smells so chocolatey. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's kind of chocolatey, a little smoky. We don't really get the marshmallow or anything, but that's nice. I like it.
I got some marshmallows here. I can
That would be great. Can roast them up for me?
That's right.
That'd be perfect.
Okay, so for those of you who don't follow the lectionary or haven't gotten around to actually doing your sermon prep, the text is Mark 7:24 through 37. I'll be really honest, Mark. I blogged about this text, as I always do, because it's one of my favorites. I did not realize till we sat down that it actually continues past the story of the Syrophoenician woman.
I think it's really interesting, though, because we have basically 24 through 30 is one healing story, and 31 through 37 is another healing story. But for me, outside of the fact that they're healing stories, they're very disconnected.
It does seem that way. It's like suddenly they're doing one thing and suddenly you're doing another thing. But
yeah, and even kind of what goes on within the stories, they don't seem to be pointing towards the same thing.
Right. Now, somebody I cannot remember who it was. I was listening to the guy who does the Practical Christian Radio show, and he actually made a really interesting comment to say that the whole idea about being open is something that Jesus had to learn first before Jesus could
I kind of like
himself. It was a cool,
kind
great
of
move.
like that.
But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves there.
Yes, we are. As we do.
Okay, so if you're unfamiliar, this is the story of the Syrophoenician woman. There's a Matthew version in which she's a Canaanite woman.
And it's sort of a better version.
Yeah, this is one of the few times where I prefer the Matthew story to the Mark story.
Yeah, I almost always prefer Mark, but there's some detail in the Matthew one that I think is helpful for this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we'll probably bring it up just because we can.
Probably. It's our show. So anyway, so you've got Jesus who goes out to the region of Tyre. He's tired while he's tired, and wants to be left alone. And a woman comes up and begs Jesus to heal his daughter, and Jesus doesn't want anything to do with it, man.
Right, and Jesus gets a little racist.
I mean, at the very least, he's very prejudiced.
At the very least, well, I mean, okay, so
at
basically,
the very least, he's expressing ethnic prejudice, if not bigotry.
Yeah. And this is part of why I like the Matthew version, because I think it really helps underscore what's going on here.
Yeah.
In the Matthew version, she falls down and yells out "Kyrie eleison." So and that's something you do when you're on you're on your knees on the ground, and as she's on all fours, Jesus calls her a dog.
Right. And isn't that a chilling image?
Yes, it is.
It's not a cool image. It's not a heartwarming image. It's not a Jesus, I love you image. It is a chilling, terrifying image to think of Jesus being this way.
And in that time, it was a racial slur for Canaanites of calling anyone who wasn't Jewish basically a dog.
Dogs were not beloved pets.
No, they weren't. They were annoyances.
They were annoyances, and so basically, you've got Jesus calling this woman an ethnic slur. Right. You can also cast it as a sexist slur too. I mean, you can kind of do both
to a degree, yeah. But I think when you look at what the slur was about,
I agree.
In its time frame, it was very much just about race, about ethnic origins. Right.
And and Jesus basically says, "No, I'm here for the Israelites and not for you."
Right.
And then we get this great line. Well, even the dogs get table scraps. And that is that line actually kind of makes me sad to hear that in a way.
Right. No.
But it's also, if you hear it in a certain way, I think it can be really cutting and a really nuanced rebuke towards Jesus.
I think it is.
She's kind of like saying, "You want to call me a dog? Well, here's what it looks like." To kind of try to almost like a subtle calling out of it.
Right.
I mean, it's not an overt like up in your face kind of thing. But I mean, if you think about it, in so many of the stories with Jesus, kind of debating and arguing with people, there's kind of this honor shame thing going on.
Right.
And Jesus is almost always victorious. This is the only place I can think of where he is shamed. Like he is shamed in the honor shame.
He's not only shamed, but I think you can make a strong argument that he learns.
I don't think you can make a strong argument. I think that's exactly
what happens. It's very clear because he ultimately after she says that, it's like Jesus recognizes the validity of her argument and says, "Okay, you're right."
And I don't think it's just that he learns. I think that it's that he unlearns as well.
True. I completely agree.
He unlearns the prejudice that he was brought up in. I think this speaks a lot to embedded culture and the kind of environment and the way our culture affects the way that we see other people.
Yeah. And we should say right now that if you're at a church where most of the people have a really high Christology, you might want to be careful pointing that fact out because it won't go over well.
No, it'll go over very, very poorly. I think this text more than almost any other text is a litmus test for how high your Christology is.
Yeah,
and if you have a really high Christology, you're going to hear this as Jesus teaching, using her as an object lesson, kind of showing off to his disciples.
Sure.
That's how you're going to hear that. But if you have less than high Christology, you're going to see Jesus as a human being. Right. I mean, this is a great argument for full humanity, right?
Exactly. But at the same time, I see this oddly. I mean, you'll immediately get this because you and I have talked about this other story so much. I see this as kind of the New Testament version of the flood story.
Interesting. Okay.
Because God learns in the flood story. God says, you know what?
Yeah. That's a great connection.
This mass killing, this solving problems with violence is not the way to go. I messed that up. I've done that now. I get it. I won't do it again. And Jesus is basically doing the same thing. You know what? Treating people this way, seeing them through this false lens, seeing them as less than, that's the wrong way to do it. You're right. I've learned. I'll stop doing it.
That's great. Okay, so there's something I've never done before with this text, and I've done a lot of stuff with this text before, but as I'm reading this, there's something that's kind of jumping out
Yeah.
About the demonic within this text. And I wonder if there's a way that you can play with the idea of racism and prejudice as the demonic that leaves when we're able to hear the realities of people who are different than us, who are marginalized, who or need or whatnot. I don't know.
I hear what you're saying. I think because it's her daughter, it's somewhat hard to make that leap. I like where you're going with it, but I think the connections doesn't quite make it.
This may be the first time Mark and I can't push a text that far.
Maybe so. And as we're talking about this, one of the other things I like about Matthew, and I think there's a lot of value in it, is in Matthew, the Greek actually, we don't do very well in interpreting it to English. The Greek suggests not only that she was asking loudly, but that she was pursuing them. It's almost like this is an annoying person and they're almost trying to get away from her, but she was persistent. She would not give up. And I think the idea of faithfulness being persistence from the margins of society is really important.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also like the Matthew version because she's labeled as a woman of great faith. Mm-hmm. Like Jesus goes full circle and goes from dog to great faith.
Right. And
like that kind of persistence and that kind of refusal to have your humanity denied time and time again.
And that's a sign of great faith.
Absolutely.
And I think particularly when you look at even in a modern context of people who have been marginalized. I mean, I live in Greensboro where the Woolworth sit-ins happened.
Yeah,
and that's a great example of folks who non-violently but persistently said, I am valuable, I'm as valuable as you, and my faith tells me that I'm not giving any of this up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they endured the kind of slurs that we see in this text.
Yeah.
I mean, the folks who have done this kind of nonviolent marches for civil rights and for equality endured the exact same kind of taunts and slurs that frankly that Jesus utters in this text.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, then you can flip it and say that another sign of faith, when you look at the character of Jesus here, is recognizing your faults and standing up for the marginalized.
Absolutely. I mean, because
I go to Dorothea Dix or someone like that who came from a very privileged life, but basically sacrificed all their privilege in order to stand up for the marginalized.
I mean, and that's the thing. That's the miraculous part of this story. Not necessarily that the demon's gone, not necessarily or any of that. To me, the miraculous thing is that somebody like Jesus can hear. I mean, I think if you want to play with high Christology, this is actually a really interesting point to do it, to talk about the Son of God. Or to talk about the second person of the Trinity being so fully human that even the Son of God gets caught up in this kind of stuff. And do we think we're better than that? Of course we too get caught up in
see,
that.
I pull Genesis back into it, even if you have a high Christology, to say, look, we are created in the image of God. We have a story of Noah where God learns, and then we have a story of Jesus. And if you have a high Christology...
So maybe it's even more powerful if you've got a high Christology.
Maybe. Well, if you have a high Christology that's not rooted in dogma and you're willing to actually let go of some of the years of junk you've been fed, then maybe
does such a thing exist? Okay, so we've done half of the text that we're assigned this week.
Yeah, we've already pretty much hit the limit that we tend to do on a Distilling of the Gospel, but we still have half the text to go.
So so like very next, Jesus goes over to the region of Decapolis, and he heals a man who is deaf by putting his fingers in his ears and spitting and touching the tongue and being open and saying being opened. And immediately the guy is open. And if you wanted to avoid the political and potentially pastoral fallout that happens if you preach the Syrophoenician woman that way, you could preach this about being open to new realities and kind of hint at what's going on in that and how important that is to be opened and allow your reality to change, to hear new realities that are typically silenced or marginalized.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, you have the setup of the first half of this is about Jesus being open to hearing someone who's marginalized and changing what he once thought and coming to a had the experience of being open, he's able to turn around and share that, and it becomes miraculous.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good example of what we do in our world. Like when you get awakened in a way, like Jesus is, to the prejudice that you experience, bigotry, racism, that kind of stuff that you perpetrate, not that you experience, that you perpetrate, or that you're a part of, or that you benefit from. And if you allow that to change you, you are going to go out into the world and try to open up other people to that reality. And I think that's part of the job that white people have, and I'm white, so I say that, is to talk to other white people about this kind of stuff and to do the work of trying to open people up, and to continually allow ourselves to be open, because it can be really painful to be opened up.
Of course.
That can be a really painful thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I don't really think we need to do much more with the second half than that.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's pretty much. I'm tapped out.
No, you know what I think we need to bring up though is because you and I right now are actually on a gag order. We can't speak of something that we'd like to talk about until later next week. Yep. And it's
one of the reasons why we're not doing a regular cast is because like we've been preparing for this and we're really excited about sharing it and all this other kind of, and it actually ties into these things.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you look at the Syrophoenician woman and how strong and bold and assertive she was about how she deserved to be treated equally.
She comes to Jesus's house that he's staying in and like barges in, like
just amazing, right?
And
so we've seen
back down.
We've been lucky enough to get to see an early release of a documentary coming out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a documentary that covers and hits on almost all of these themes. And so we're not really allowed to say much of it right now, but we really want to encourage you guys to tune in next week when we're doing this and we're reviewing this film and talking about it, because I really think our listeners are going to absolutely love this film. I was blown away by it. You probably know some of the story, but seeing it this way on film.
Well, I mean, we can tell them who it's about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about Malala. The young girl who was shot by the Taliban,
right? And she won a Nobel Peace Prize, but they get you that opening, right? But that opening scene, that animation, it's just you're hooked from the beginning. Yeah, and we can't say much more than that, but we're going to talk about it a lot next week, and we hope you guys will tune in. It is a powerful story and really well done.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we're kind of like failing to mention is that it's time to drop some music. And I feel like we should, since people stuck with us this week and we don't have a regular show, we should definitely give them some Freddie Fry.
day.